you mentioned like minimal viable product. Can you just maybe give the audience that might not know what that is, just to maybe explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's only probably been the last, I don't know, 5 years that it really started to resonate, and I really got it. Like, so minimum viable product. If you have an idea, or it could be a minimum viable goal in your life, but let's say product. Um, it's if you've got an idea to maybe bring something to market. The biggest mistake I think people make is feature creep. They'll say, "Hey, this would be good," and they start making it, and they start throwing in things that are luxury items instead of really honing in on the ember of why it might solve pain points and why somebody might want to purchase it over something else. But it's also the selection of that, like, widget. So when you're trying, if you're kind of interested in something and you're trying to decide, oh, I kind of would like to do this, and you really say, well, what's the core of this? And you're really narrow down what is the real, like, ember. You might realize that ember is being done by so many other people. It's going to be really tough. Or the ember doesn't interest me as much as I thought it did. Or the ember, it's people, I don't think it's that useful, or it's too risky. A lot of people might not think it was an important enough ember.
Right.
So that it's the selection process and narrowing it down to, I remember talking to one of our Propel colleagues who was creating a smartwatch, and we had a smart ring.
The smart ring. Yeah, I remember that.
And we had an interesting discussion where there's so much competition coming in that space.
Yeah.
And just saying, okay, you're not going to be able to compete very well with like Samsung,
the Fitbits and all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
all these companies, including if Apple comes out with one. What's the core? Like, is it medical? Is it what is it going to take? What is it going to do in a way that's better or cheaper? And then, like, if you really do it versus, I'm not sure exactly what it could do, all these different features. Like, you better narrow that down.
Right.
But it becomes more fun when you narrow it down, because then you actually have a better chance of creating something tangible versus this feature creep.
Yeah. And something that actually really solves a problem that people are having.
Yeah, it'll hopefully be a good choice. And that kind of builds on itself, because you're like, hey, I think this is a good idea. Maybe I'm kind of onto something, and you start to build it, and you're like, I actually believe in this. Versus you might start to build it, and you might say, the more I get into this, I'm not sure if it's a very good idea. So that minimum viable product, to kind of keep looking at it and say, should it shift? Should it stay what I thought it was? And is it still small enough? Obviously, before you go to market, hopefully you can add some luxury items on. But version 2 is fine for all of those. And whichever ones make it into the first release, great. But as long as you know what that minimum thing is until you've created it, it's like you're wasting time creating things on the peripheral.
Yeah. Are there even things that people can do even before they go to actually build something to test out whether their MVP or whether their idea is actually something that's worthwhile pursuing? Because I have a billion ideas, and probably a lot of them are just garbage. So instead of me spending all this time trying to build something and then put it out there, are there things that people can do to test things out before they invest too much time into it?
So the accelerator where I met you, I think that was the biggest thing I took away from that, was interviewing people.
Right.
You tell me what you thought about that.
Yeah. No, I thought it was a really good idea is trying to really figure out how your idea is going to serve a particular market or a particular type of person. So if you have an idea of a product and you have an idea of who the market is going to be, instead of building something, just go out and try to talk to those people that you think are going to help. Tell them about your idea and interview them, and then see what they have to say about it, and just kind of have a dialogue with them, and then just figure out if it's gonna work or not.
Yeah, it's funny how I used to think this way too. Is, well, if I tell somebody about it, unless you're inventing something magical that's easy to recreate, to tell somebody about a really great idea you have, the odds of that person saying, "Oh, this is a good idea, I'm going to steal it and go do something," the odds of that somehow hurting your journey versus the odds of them giving you feedback that will increase the odds of your success.
Right.
It's probably, like, depending on what it is, my guess is the average is 1,000 to 1 or
Yeah,
something.
maybe even more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it depends on the product. Obviously, if you have an inventive thing or idea that you know is a special one, like it's a new flying jacket because
Right.
you
Yeah,
figured
yeah.
out the flux capacitor.
Yeah, or hoverboard or something.
Yeah. So if you're talking to someone and say, "Hey, I figured out the flux capacitor.
Yeah.
You just got to tweak this knob," that's dangerous.
For sure.
But
for
there's
sure.
not too many flying jackets products around
Right.
that. And even if it was, you could talk to somebody about, if I made a flying jacket, and they'd be like, "This guy's crazy," but yeah, I'd use it. So
yeah.
you can
Yeah.
always do it. But yeah, I think it's obvious. You know that if you build it and you're smart, they will probably come. And to me, it's a mix of listening to your customer, and also a lot of times a customer might not realize the problems or talk about a band-aid. So to me, it's a mix of listening and getting feedback from the customer, along with trying to come up with something maybe your customer hasn't thought of yet, and the mix of those two. Like a lot of people say, well, I'm just going to really listen to the customer, but they don't innovate on their own. To me, it's more exciting to really try to come up and push yourself to create an awesome product, and then get the feedback and see if that helps you improve it. I mean, even asking people could help you come up with the product, but I think it's a mix of, if you really think well about your MVP and you really think it's good before you talk to somebody and you really do your research, you can build it and they will come.
Yeah.
A lot of the time.
I will say, for me, in my personal experience, though, I mean, I like that slogan, if you build it, they will come. But I feel like it's very dangerous, because the startup of the thing that I started, which was creating components to help people build websites, I spent 6 months building that thing, and nobody knew about it, nobody knows about it, and nobody came.
Yep.
So I think if you're going to build it and you think it's a good idea, and I thought it was a really great idea, but I didn't put forth the effort to do the proper marketing to get people to know about it. So I think you have to, yes, think it's a good idea, and maybe you're solving like your own problem, which could be a good thing to do, but you got to figure out how you're going to do the marketing aspect of it to let people know about it. Because at the end of the day, people still need to know.
And it depends a lot on the product too. If you make a flying jacket, it's going to sell. Right. Depending on how it works, I guess.
Yeah, so it doesn't crash and burn. Listen, 50% of the people, they can land it.
Yeah, maybe it's not a good example, but I don't know, if you built something like that, there's certain things, it's like, if this worked, I'm 99.9% sure people are going to buy it because there's nothing else out there. Versus if it's something that's not quite as much of a huge like breakthrough or something, then it's that feedback's way more important in early days to maybe, if you had done all that, you may have been, it's probably awesome that you did it. Because that's the thing. You won. You went through that process. You learned so much, I'm guessing, even if some of it was just, you thought was slugging away at work, that he's like, is this gonna, but that's being in prison, man.
Yep.
You got to be in prison.
Those are the failures. Don't be afraid to fail. And
And so the thing is, back then, if you had asked more people and they guided you, and maybe you kind of settled on a podcast thing, which I sense is one of your, like, definitely in your wheelhouse, then you may have done this sooner. But who knows what you would have lost in not failing and learning from it. Who knows which is better.
Yeah, that's a big, I think we're going to talk about this. I have a few questions to ask you about this, but maybe we can just talk about it right now. Is, for me, when I was doing that thing, I've kind of slowly came to the realization that doing websites every day and doing things around that, it wasn't really a passion. It wasn't something that really made me wake up in the morning and be like, yes, I'm going to do this. Because I've been doing it for like 20 years now. And it's kind of gone to the point where I'm like, I'm not really learning much anymore. And
I've sensed it. I hear it. I see it right now. Yeah, it's obvious.
Like, oh, yeah.
And I'm guessing you have to balance it with your existing clients to let them know, I do still enjoy this. I still want to support you.
Of course. Well, that's even where it's really fun. When I'm talking to my clients, I'm having sit downs with them. I'm like, we can do this on your website and we can do all this. And they're like, yes, this is amazing. Let's do it. And I'm like, all right, let's do it. But then when I have to sit down and implement, it's like, can I just hire somebody else to do it? So that's where I'm kind of at now. It's like, if I could figure out how I could just bring somebody else to do the work that I don't like doing, but then I could just interact with people, right? And have the stuff that really does.
You're so selfish.
Me,
I just want to sit back and do all the fun stuff.
Yeah, I know. It's so selfish. But yeah, so that's just kind of the mindset that I'm slowly kind of realizing is like, what is it that I can do in my life that makes me feel that every day I'm waking up doing something that's meaningful and enjoyable.
Yeah. Well, I really think you got to. It's almost the longer you're in prison, the better, as long as you come out and you still have some life left.
Right. Yeah, it's true. Until you figure it out. Well, it's funny. You're going back to the whole thing you said about ideas. There's so many people that I've talked to, and I've tried really hard to push them away from this. Is they're like, I'm going to start this business. I have this idea, but I'm not going to tell anybody about it because I'm pretty sure like everyone's going to steal my idea. And I'm like, nobody is going to steal your idea. And I hear the idea, and I'm like,
short. Life is too short.
Yeah,
it's like the odds of someone stealing your idea versus you actually going forward and finishing your idea. It's just ridiculous. Everybody has other lives out there. I mean, again, it depends. If you've figured out the flux capacitor, don't show people the blueprints.
Yeah.
Other than that,
And even then, because it's all about execution and everything like that too. Like I wanted, like Elon Musk, I always look at him and look at all the different things he's doing. Like he can have a billion ideas, but he just knows how to execute. Like I can take his ideas of, hey, I want to launch a rocket in space. I don't know the first thing about doing that, but I guess he just has all those things to be able to execute the idea. Maybe you have a different opinion on.
No, I mean, I hate the man, but I'm curious. Hopefully he comes through whatever. I think he's doing things he should have got out of his system in his 20s, but maybe I just don't. I sense I don't like the person.
Yeah.
So but I've wondered about that, and I don't even want to spend the time learning about it. But if it was him doing it to set up the teams that are brilliant teams, if that was his doing and not his assistants being able to do it, like he's obviously genius in all these ways. But yeah, that's one of the things is like, how do you build those teams so that you can sit back and be the Steve Jobs?
That's a whole nother skill in itself then, to be able to get talented people around you to do the stuff that you can't.
And I don't think I'm good at that. It's just, I may or may not be good at it, but it's something I'd rather build stuff. And so it's a double-edged sword where it's like, well, if I want it done, I'll do it myself. And I don't mind because I love what I'm doing. But if some of those things I was doing, I was able to build a little team to start it, they would go much more quickly.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I'm like, well, maybe later on, but right now, until I learn, it's kind of like Steve Jobs. He was a software developer. He was in the trenches for all of the first Mac and everything. He actually knew what the heck he was doing. And so to kind of at the early stage, like again, I feel like I'm 30. I'm 52. I feel like I'm 30 in a business world because I'm just learning.
Don't look a day over 35 to me from here, man.
It's off-putting to hear that.
No, the off-putting. Yeah.
So then I should be off-putting, but
yeah,
anyway.
I'll be off-putting. Eh?
So, but yeah, it's like to have earned your stripes or cut your teeth or whatever is essential, I think, to then being somebody who could properly manage a team and get the respect from the team because they know, hey, well, at least you kind of know what you're talking about. And so that was a painful process for me with my first real startup, a film technology, where we are at the mercy of modern software developers. I think we went through 3 firms, some of them very arrogant, some of them great, but all kinds of issues, but really at the mercy of these younger developers, throwing hundreds of thousands of dollars at them. And I mean, that was just one aspect of the whole project. But that's where when I ended up exiting, I just said, I got to learn to be a real coder, developer. I don't want to feel that powerless again. Like, it wasn't bad. I was just like, hey, I wish I knew more, whether it was to do it myself or just to really have synergy with the developers. And so that's where I said, I'm doing this. And for 10 years now, I've pretty much lived and breathed and tried to become a real modern software developer instead of a scientific programmer.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So